Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, July 12th, 2017. We got to hurry up and get to everything in the world today before we don't want to get caught flat-footed if it turns out that the Trump administration ends during today's show. So we'll try and grab everything we can and read it quickly. If there's any chance, any of you could tweet me on the hashtag KITM if at any point during today's show President Trump or any major members of his administration abscond from the country and either try fleeing on official resources or taking bricks of gold from Fort Knox with them, anything like that. People down in Kentucky, keep your eyes open for C-130s being landed there and offloading the gold. Seriously, we have to watch out for this today. Of course, I have a feeling he will remain president throughout the entirety of this 24-hour cycle. But I'm not certain about that. At any rate, we'll check in with Joan McCarter later on, and of course Greg Dworkin for one of his 3 weekly stops, and catch up on the news. There are other things going on, but of course, total feeding frenzy mode at this point among the Washington D.C. press. President Trump is up and rage tweeting again, finally focusing on the issues involving his, Don Jr., I was going to say his son, but Eric's news cycle was a couple of days ago, although he's worked his way back into the news in the last couple of days. We'll catch up with everything we can and try and find the interesting angles on all of this. Armando, of course, has got a rant prepared at some point, but I don't know if we can fit him in today. We could probably double him up if it makes good sense, or if Greg is wrong about anything, I suppose. That's an easy enough door to open. Armando claims Greg is wrong every time, so it shouldn't. The bar is not high, but we're not really so sure that he's wrong most of these times. That's why we have him on so frequently. But debate is healthy, unless, of course, you're debating whether or not to collude with the Russians and upend American elections. Lots of interesting reporting today, lots of different angles to go at. We also have to catch up on what's going on with what I think probably ought to, at this point, he's absolutely right, be labeled treason care. I did see that suggestion made earlier this morning. It's something I've been sort of thinking about in the back of my mind for a while as well. It seems like the obvious next step. Might as well just say it, keep the word in the news, just like we used to have to work hard to keep the I word in the news when it was necessary and proper. Everybody's got that on the tip of their tongue today. No reason to continue. You don't need to prod people to start thinking impeachment. But you might as well prod them on the T word. No one wants to use that one. And it may, of course, never come to that. I don't know if there's any way in the world that something that is inherently political like this ever finally gets the treason label nailed down to it, but it doesn't have to. Lots of other things happening today, though. We'll check in on all of those. Let's see, what other news can we round up? Well, first of all, it's been a while since I took the time. Every day, of course, is a 5-alarm fire. So I haven't had the chance to check in with Bill's morning tweets, and this one puzzles me, as they all do. He's a creative guy, and sometimes it sounds like an idea that we ought to take up. Daily Co's Radio is live now. Today's lineup, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Dem from Connecticut is how you'll find Greg Dworkin tweeting on the Twitter machines. Joan McCarter, believe it or not, is the handle of Joan McCarter on Twitter. And, of course, Squirt the Wonder Squid. Why not? I'll open the door to anybody. It's healthy to have debate, and you got to have a Republican on your panel just to balance things out. Both sides, as we always do on this show. I think that's his name, Squirt the Wonder Squid. It's not a command. The unnamed Wonder Squid, that's someone you should squirt. This is not an order from Bill. It's just a suggestion. Anyway, let's see. Where do we want to go? All of Greg's stories now coming across the Twitter transom, so we'll prepare for those things, bringing those up. And I think the big story of this morning in terms of really moving the ball forward on the investigations, lots of wrap-up stories, and we'll cover all of those, no doubt. I should see, is this one? Have you got McClatchy in there yet, Greg? I don't see the McClatchy story in there yet. We haven't had time to digest it. We'll digest it on the fly. That's the one which has received the most Twitter attention in the last hour or so. The news that the Mueller probe now looking into the activities of the Jared Kushner-led campaign digital front, the digital campaign, including outreach, fake news, and the like, and how much coordination was there with Russia, Russian hackers, Eastern European bots of various national extraction. Macedonians come to mind. So lots of talk about that. Let's have Greg on. Let's wrap it up. Let's get started. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up the administration and I'll go home. I'd like to wake up from this dream. Greg, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Let's all just put it in a box and push it out to sea. And maybe it'll arrive in Europe and maybe we'll see what happens.
Right. My older son just came back from sea. He's a salty type sailor now. The kids say salty.
Swears like a sailor now, right?
I know, right? He was swearing quite a bit before his trip, and I was like, save it. You're actually going to sail. I think you're allowed to say whatever you want. I'm not,
tell him.
Sailing as a Boy
There's only
Scout.
limited amounts of swear words, and you got to save them up, otherwise you use them, and then what?
Yeah, although, sailing with Boy Scouts, I don't know whether that's necessarily on the agenda, but at any rate, I might as well ask him. He hasn't complied with my request to sing me any sea chanties yet. I'm waiting on that.
Oh, those are pretty racy too.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
My abbreviated pundit roundup today was throw more alligators in the swamp, and I started it off with a picture I made yesterday, which is the entire family, the Trump crime family.
Yes.
Right. I have Donald in the middle. I have Donald Jr. and Eric and Melania and Ivanka and Tiffany over on the side, and each one has a little thought balloon. Call me Fredo. No, I'm Fredo. We're all Fredo. I'm Fredo too. I'm so Fredo. And of course, Tiffany's saying, I'm staying out of it. And, the whole debate, remember, we've been having this debate for weeks. Which one is the dumb one? I can't remember. I think we've established beyond a doubt it's Don Jr.
Yeah, well, it's a close tie.
It's a close one, but I mean,
I think
Eric thought he was just going to steal from cancer kids, but hey, no.
Yeah.
Don Jr. is like in the treason territory here.
Right.
And yes, I know treason as a technical term doesn't count because, technically speaking, we're not at war. And even if he's giving aid and comfort to the enemy, Russia isn't defined as the enemy in a formal sense. And that's like calling an AR-15 an automatic weapon, and therefore you're no longer qualified to discuss background checks.
Right. I am not certain who Colin Kaepernick was supposed to have been at war with, but it was pretty easy, I found, for a different
But in the colloquial sense, it's fine.
Well, then we're speaking colloquially.
Axios has some terrific stories this morning that I want to go over.
Axios, okay.
From the pundit roundup, I have their one about the White House knows the Trump story is bad, the Trump Jr. one.
Okay.
And people are calling it a smoking gun. And part of the thing, as Richard Allen Smith points out, is that nobody found it remarkable at all that Russia was contacting Trump Jr. in order to talk about Hillary Clinton's email. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, look at this, we have contact with Russia. Oh, by the way, we have this Russian thing we'd like you to come to.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, no big deal.
But that was, as he said, that was before the Russia hysteria, so I'm innocent. That's apparently that was one of Don Jr.'s lines of defense the other day. This all happened before all of you knew. Is what he's saying.
Even Russ Douthat is saying, I was one of those Russia collusion skeptics, but no longer, whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's there.
He's now wearing a Russian fur hat instead of a
Right.
down
Huffington
hat.
Post has Americans are overwhelmingly suspicious of Russia. Among all respondents, just 17% consider Russia friendly or an ally of the U.S. 37% call it unfriendly. 24% say it's an enemy. Only 14% hold a favorable opinion of Putin. 63% view him as unfavorably. So perhaps that is Trump's floor eventually. We'll see if we ever get there. But, I think that Ana Navarro, a couple of days ago, had the absolute best summary of this entire Trump Jr. situation.
Okay, good. Let's be done with it once and for all.
Okay, you know what her analysis was?
No.
This kid was dropped on his head as a child.
Oh, that was her?
Yeah.
I did see that said, and I being tweeted around as a, I don't remember which publication was teasing it, and they just said GOP person, who I don't know what label they attached to her.
Yeah, she's right.
All right, yeah, right. I was wondering if it was somebody else. I was like, because a lot of people are late comers to this.
Trump,
And I thought, maybe she was dropped on your head. It took you so long to figure this out. But Ana Navarro is known for a long time.
Right. One of the funnier things, Patrick Monahan had this series, and I was watching it real time as this was happening. There's people, one of the SQs, I forget which one's the Republican and which one's the Democrat, Carter and Tucker.
Tucker, I think.
So he and Ed Rogers write a point-counterpoint,
Okay.
kind of a column in the Washington Post, and it was Ed Rogers' job to write yesterday.
Okay.
He's the Republican, and that's kind of unfortunate.
Oh, I see. You were looking for the Democrat then. Okay.
I'm just saying, I forget who the Democrat was because I haven't seen his columns in a while.
Okay.
But life comes at you at a speedy pace. The media's mass hysteria over collusion is out of control. Here's my take, says Ed Rogers early in the day.
Yeah, Carter is the Democrat.
Yeah, there you go. So at 10 a.m., it's like the media's mass hysteria over collusion is out of control. Here's my take. And he posts this piece. And then 1 o'clock, updated, a rookie amateur mistake. And then 3 o'clock, updated. Hard to see how this ends well.
Well, he's following, and
and he's
not digging
updating
his
the
heels
story
in.
as we go, and it's hysterical because I can't believe you're saying collusion, ridiculous collusion. Okay, there's some collusion, but that's not the point. The point is really, obviously it was a mistake oh my God, did he say that in the emails? Gee. And you're watching this real time as he's writing the column, and it's absolutely hysterical. And that is pretty much the nutshell of what happened yesterday. Liam Donovan quoted this from the New York Times. Inside Mr. Trump's team, the response to the developments has become a subject of intense dispute. 3 people familiar with his son's account said he pushed to offer a full explanation on Saturday when first contacted by the Times, and said he agitated to be allowed to defend himself publicly. Aside to our listening public, those are the liars. But 3 other people involved in the discussions offered a completely contrary version, insisting the younger Mr. Trump adamantly resisted an expansive disclosure. Yes, you can look at it and believe what you want to believe, but the first group is lying.
All right.
Just so you know.
All right. Well, I like to keep up with those.
Yeah, So I do have that Ed Rogers piece in its finality there. One of the interesting timelines that people put up, Rob Goldstone, who set up the Trump Jr. Russia meeting, checked into Trump Tower on Facebook.
He did.
At 3:57 p.m., the day of the meeting, and there's a picture. Rob Goldstone checked into Trump Organization June 9th, 2016 at 3:57 p.m. I don't know if I put this in the list, so I'm going to give this to you at the very bottom.
Do you know that he rated Russia 5 stars on Yelp?
Yeah, apparently.
That's nuts.
But the Trump Organization had 4-star rating here as a business center.
Not from him.
No, but that's on the picture.
Yeah, it's so. Although didn't it
only got 4 out of 5 stars, so I'm surprised he was allowed in the
there's
building.
room for improvement.
Anyway, so the meeting began at 4 p.m. and ran about 20 to 30 minutes. And that means Trump tweeted his first ever ask for Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails about 15 minutes after the Russians left.
Yeah, that's about his usual timing with Fox and Friends. That's how long it takes him to compose a tweet saying, yeah.
Now, people have mentioned that in May, he referenced the 30,000 emails. I think that's because Clinton brought it up. But this was the first ask. that he had, which was like just a few minutes after the meeting. So lots of talk about that, obviously. And just before we get into distraction from other things, I'm trying to talk in cable news talk. Mm-hmm. Before we get into a distraction of other things, because all of that will cast shadows over everything about the Trump administration, I do want to talk about two other stories in the Times today, which are related. One is Democratic House candidates were also targets of Russian hacking, and they also talk about Florida in particular, where people who were running had all of their campaign stuff suddenly posted online.
What? Where's this? I missed this.
Yeah, so did I. Everybody was concentrating on everything else.
Yes.
So about halfway down, you see a woman dressed in blue on your list there.
Oh, on the list. Okay.
Do you see it?
Well, it probably is one of the things that comes through as you have a. No, I don't. A woman dressed in blue.
I'll put it on the bottom where you can find it.
I have to open up all these things in order for them to see. Okay, let's look at the bottom.
Let's post it.
All right, if you insist.
There it is.
New York Times. Okay. Yeah, they don't open up. I have to click on them. So there we go. Okay. Hello, she's in blue. Who is this?
Okay, that looks like it's Annette Taddeo.
Yes, okay.
A Democrat who lost her primary race after secret campaign documents were made public.
Huh. Okay. This is ominous.
2016 election. A handful of Democratic House candidates became targets of a Russian influence operation that made thousands of pages of documents stolen by hackers from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in Washington available to Florida reporters and bloggers. It was like I was standing out there naked, said Annette Taddeo. Wow. A Democrat who lost her primary race after secret campaign documents were made public. So it was a primary and not a general, and that's why maybe it didn't come to our attention.
Yes,
our entire internal strategy plan was made public. All this material was out there, could be used against me.
Well, okay.
And they claim in the article nearly a dozen House races were affected.
That is amazing. Now, usually your internal strategy plan isn't something that necessarily to be used against you just because it's out there, but I mean, you can certainly counter it. But
so you're talking about
what's the time frame
in your own party?
I don't see any date given to this. But primaries, a graphic. No wonder. I ignore those things. All right.
It says open graphic.
Oh, okay. I will. It does say that. Why don't you open the graphic, New York Times?
Why don't you open the graphic?
I don't understand this.
No, you first. Anyway, so this maybe I'm going to leave for you to do later because there's like a lot in here and I think it's kind of important.
Uh-oh.
But I wanted you to have it.
Yes, thanks. I'm scrolling. There's like no easy, I gotta read it.
Sorry, that's why we're doing it later. So I'll talk
but that's pretty amazing. Let me just throw one thing in there. I would like, when we all read this, even if we don't read it on the air and you read it at home, read it with the recorded conversation of, May 2016, June 2016, mid-June, right after the meeting at Trump Tower, by the way, the recorded conversation between Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, and other members of the Republican House leadership.
Talking about Dana Rohrabacher?
About Dana Rohrabacher, but more importantly about how they know that the Russians internationally, all over Europe, all around the world, are interfering in elections, and in response, agree not only to do nothing, but to do everything they can to silence all discussion of it, knowing something like that it will benefit Republicans and hurt Democrats, and now we find out that program was already in place. That's why they were being quiet about it.
A very interesting thing happened on cable TV. One of my favorite reporters on MSNBC, Casey Hunt, asked Mitch McConnell at a press conference yesterday. Live.
Okay.
So, what's your response to the idea that a lot of this collusion question was coming up and presented to you and you decided not to do anything about it?
Yeah, more than that, but okay.
But that was the question.
Yes.
How do you respond to that?
Well, walk away.
No, he responded in a Mitch McConnell way, which people used to in Washington say, this is so brilliant, look at him, he's so wily. And now, in retrospect, looks like you're kidding me. Your party is in the midst of a firestorm and is burning down, and this is your answer? And his answer was, I'm very confident that the Intelligence Committee in the Senate will do its job. with a bipartisan approach to answering that question. And that was his answer to every possible thing that anybody brought up about what are you doing wrong. Mitch McConnell always refers the question back to the committees in the Senate. That's not really for me to answer. That's up to the committee.
Okay.
It's a great answer from a political point of view when you don't want to answer, but it is completely and totally insufficient now. And it was just a really fascinating response.
If you were in front of the committee,
what about the fact that you knew all of this and you decided to do nothing?
Yes.
Well, the committee will look into that and they'll come up with the answer.
Yeah. I would like to see them. I'm glad people are asking questions. You can.
Yes, they are.
You can sharpen your
question. Yeah.
You can sharpen those questions. At this point, there's already reporting on the record saying there's more than you did nothing. It's you did something actively to prevent someone else who wanted to do something from doing. And it was the person charged with protecting the country's election integrity, ultimately, the President of the United States. And you said, I'll make
you may not buy
problem.
this argument. You're absolutely correct. You may not buy the argument, but one has to at least acknowledge the fact that one of the reasons Obama didn't do as much as he could or should have prior to the election is he felt it would be labeled as a partisan attack by the Mitch McConnells of the world who told Obama that that's exactly what they would do.
That's
if
not
he
a
brought
feeling.
It up.
That's the truth. I felt that would happen because Mitch McConnell threatened me with it.
Yes.
And it's too bad. And it's definitely, it's one of those areas where you see, a cautious, thoughtful president fall prey to his own caution and thoughtfulness. But,
instead of playing hardball politics.
Yeah.
Because what you do is you go to the public and say, not only did this happen, but Mitch McConnell told me not to do it, and I'm telling you, he told me, he threatened me, I'm telling you.
There's no doubt that doing it that way would have been spun, and it would have worked too, to say, look, he's trying to influence the elections by painting Republicans as somehow involved in a criminal conspiracy. They are. But yes, it would have been tough.
It would have been very difficult.
And he may ultimately have been the right decision.
It may well have been the right decision at the time.
I hope not, but I feel like it might be.
As difficult as it was. But, now when McConnell starts to get asked these questions, and they are starting, and this did happen yesterday, it's going to be very interesting. Here's the other piece that I thought was quite interesting after our discussions over the last few months and years, and this appears by Carlson in the New York Times, and I loved the title.
New York Times again. All right. I'm looking.
Republicans reluctantly acknowledge a failure of governing.
Oh, at last.
At last. That's what I said when I
I've been wondering when they were going to, because, they have to show that they can govern.
Republicans are failing at governance, and they know it, and they're using putting back the August recess as an example of this. As Joe McCarter has pointed out, part of the reason is because they're afraid to go home and talk to their constituents.
Yes.
But it's also an acknowledgement that they haven't gotten anything done and they can't.
I think so. I mean, I don't think, okay. I know how you could fail to acknowledge it. You just don't. But yes, that's happening. They don't want to go home and face constituents.
Right.
August recess is not an easy time to find your member of Congress. Anyway, they're supposed to be home, but they hide. Generally speaking. This time, of course, they
always
go.
go.
The whole thing.
I mean, it's a very unusual thing to not go.
To not arrive home.
As somebody pointed out, that's like canceling your fact-finding trip to Europe in August.
Yeah. That's what they usually try and do. But, okay, so they'll be hiding from their constituents, yes. I thought at first they might just they said they were going to cancel, the first 2 weeks of it? And
yeah, something like that.
It's about how long it would take to put ankle monitors.
And that perhaps is a segue into what's going on with the healthcare vote, which I know you'll get to with Joan. So I don't feel bad if I don't get to it. I'm going to try.
Yeah, you can leave that although I'm sure she would rather.
There's some big stuff in there, though, so I think it's worthwhile discussing. Anyway, Axios has this really, really good soap opera coverage of what's going on right now.
They love the soap operas. They're good for that, I guess.
They are. They have a lot of good information. They've been doing very good work on covering the healthcare stuff, too.
Well, that's good.
But as far as the soap opera, this is Axios AM. It's like the Mike Allen,
Win the Morning.
Thing. He wrote it, so it's a summary of what everybody else at Axios is doing.
Okay.
Right? One big thing, Jared's judgment. In the media, the focus is on the son, but in the West Wing, colleagues are watching the son-in-law.
All right.
Now remember, Jared's the one who's actually at the biggest lawyer-type legal risk here because he's the official.
Yes.
Don Jr. is not.
Right.
And Jared's the one that forgot the 3 meetings when it was time to get security clearance. Do we know the mechanism for how he loses his security clearance because he should?
We do not know the mechanism because nothing matters. There's a mechanism that is usually used. I anticipated early on that was out the window. The ultimate problem with security clearances is that, once again, it comes down to what the president says. And usually a president will say, politically, I must distance myself. I'll have to wash my hands of this and leave it to the official, to officialdom. And they will follow the rules that are supposed to be applicable. This president never lets go.
Certainly not with family.
So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, underlying all of this, and I'll get out of your way in a second. Underlying all of this is security clearance and classification. All of that is ultimately all derived from the implied powers granted to the presidency under the Constitution. And basically, it comes down to, if the president says it's okay to declassify this document, done. And if there's a security clearance needed, if he says you've got it, done. We usually delegate it to a somewhat more transparent and open process, in the sense that there are rules to be followed, but ultimately the president can probably, under his implied powers, short-circuit it. And so there's no telling what it would look like if Jared Kushner didn't currently have, or never got, or did have and then lost his security clearance. This president will let him operate the same way either way.
Yeah, I suppose. So, several times, remember, this is all coming from interviews with friendlies, that is to say, people who actually like this guy.
Okay.
Several top officials describe Jared Kushner in very similar ways, a good guy with good intentions under rising scrutiny because of a combination of naivete and hubris. He was used to how things were done in business and in New York real estate, no less. Mm-hmm. Whereas in public life, anything can come out, everything's under a microscope. That was true for many inside Trump Incorporated during the fast and loose days of the campaign and transition.
That's why
everything is being treated as bigger than it is, but he's in the big leagues now, so the Republican friendly to him. He's trying to bravado his way through his lack of experience.
Okay. My comment on that, once again, that was why I and so many other people told you the idea of, well, we need a businessman in the White House was a bad idea. You don't need a businessman in the White House. You need someone who knows how a White House works in the White House.
Right, exactly. And that's the whole governance thing. And the fact that Republicans can't govern, and they were talking about the House and the Senate, actually applies to the White House too.
Also, secondary point. No, neither he nor Trump were used to how things are done in business. Those two guys aren't in business in the way we tend to think about it. They're in real estate.
And they're in real estate.
Family businesses, not Fortune 500 companies with real responsibilities to outside interests.
Right. To their stockholders, as it were.
Yes.
Some colleagues have started to wonder if he and Ivanka will return to New York for this school year. But we're told he's made no moves to do that. Others noted change in his demeanor, less swagger, more concern. The Republicans are saying, everybody's telling him, stick it out. You're the only voice of sanity. If you go, it's the end of the world.
Yes, go ahead. Leave.
I mean, there's nothing that someone with a huge ego likes to hear more than you. The fate of the world depends upon your decisions. We love you and you can't leave.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if there's any Republicans who are like, the agenda is, yes, stay in this jurisdiction.
What worries Jared, allies, are 3 meetings, all of which he delayed disclosing. One was with a Russian lawyer, that's the Don Jr. meeting. One was with a banker, and one was with a diplomat.
3 Russians.
Right.
Okay.
Jared's defense, he had the most impressive legal team of any of the family members, including 2 of the biggest names in the business, Jamie Garlick and Abby Lowell. The view in Kushner's orbit is the brutal new revelations are more PR problems than legal problems. And if he makes progress with his Middle East peace efforts, perceptions would be very different.
Progress with his what?
Middle East peace efforts. Did I talk to you about hubris here?
Okay. Well, if he finds a unicorn.
And about how he has to stay because you're the realist in the group?
The voice of reason.
Am I missing something? Yeah, the voice of reason.
Wow.
Am I missing something here?
All right.
And why it matters, Kushner's the one figure, the Russia probe, who helped run the campaign, the transition, and the White House. Nobody has spent more time with Trump throughout the past year and has seen or knows more. Then the second piece, and this is a relatively long one, but it's all fascinating. Trump versus everyone.
Yes.
Trump increasingly feels and knows that he's fighting virtually every force in U.S. and global politics, even those who initially wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt or seem friendly. See Russ out and abandoning him over collusion. The only people truly on his side are the 40% of voters who continue to cheer his middle finger to the powerful. And that's not going to change. It's 38-40. And what's going to change, in my view, is that, this is me speaking, not Axios, is that all of a sudden people are going to wake up and say, oh my gosh, it's only 38%. That's terrible. That's a really low number.
Yeah.
What about the other 62%? My goodness, I don't think he has any chance of getting any higher than 38. I wonder how low it will go. That's what happens. It's not that the base is going to change. They're already cracking. It's not 40% solid. The only people truly on his side are the 40% of voters who continue to cheer his middle finger. All these forces, basically permanent Washington plus crucial world leaders, are deeply suspicious of Trump and are increasingly seeing their duty to thwart him for moral or practical reasons. Let me throw that moral one in there. People hate that and they start calling us social justice warriors. But the fact is, whether or not he's guilty of treason, Don Jr., and the Trump campaign and Trump himself, because obviously he knew about it, it's wrong.
Yeah.
People just leave that out because it's Washington. But doing what he's doing is wrong. And Republicans supporting him are wrong. And in the midst of the firestorm that's burning their party down, they can't acknowledge that. And that's Mitch McConnell's problem. And that's why he's referring it back to committee.
And I guess it probably is it certainly is what motivates is collusion really problematic? Is it a crime? Is it even wrong?
If the president does it, it's not a crime.
In addition to that, I mean, they're willing to excuse it from almost anybody. They're basically saying what's wrong, or I think the new approach, I saw Michael Cohen commenting essentially, look, the purpose of a campaign
Michael
is
Cohen,
to
the
win.
lawyer, or
yes.
Michael Cohen, the guy who writes for the Boston Globe?
Michael Cohen, the lawyer, the bad lawyer, the says who guy.
Yeah.
The evil one.
Sorry.
There are several others out there, of course. But yeah, his response was, look, the purpose of a campaign is to win it. And if that means you met with Russians to get information that helped you win it, so what? In other words, that there's no illegal way to win an election.
Every single consultant, from Steve Schmidt to Matthew Dowd to everybody who's ever, Nicole Wallace, anybody who's done Oppo research themselves, who works on Republican campaigns professionally, says, no, that is not the standard. The standard is you drop what you're doing and you call the FBI.
Right. And,
no professional on the Republican side, let alone the Democratic side, who agree, and in fact have done this, because that's what happened with Gore and Bush, and Gore getting a hold of the Bush debate preps. They dropped it and called the FBI. That's what you do. Why? Because if it's stolen goods, you're at risk. And the whole discussion about whether Don Jr. did or did not break campaign laws, because what's the value of the information he may have or may not have gotten from the Russians, part of that is tied into, was it stolen?
Yep. But
you don't have to answer that. I mean, it doesn't matter whether he's at risk or not. It's wrong.
Yeah. And like I said, so that's their first line of defense. And if that fails, then they fall back on the one up there in the Axios article earlier. Well, he was used to the way things are done in business, which, by the way, it would have been wrong in business as well.
He's totally naive. It was a rookie mistake.
Yes.
And that's why
we need
Ed
these
Rogers
geniuses
was going with in that earlier piece. But the fact is, Manafort has been doing this for 40 years, so no, that doesn't fly.
Yeah. Oh, well. Okay. What else do they got that don't fly?
All right. So what goes around comes around, said one of Washington's Republican pillars. He was critical of each of these groups. Why are they going to go to the mat for him? He's done so many things outside the norms. Huge swing in the barometric pressure for these groups. CEOs originally embraced him. Now they face increasingly intense resistance to oppose him from employees and shareholders.
They have the hard jobs.
Outside of the Saudis, the Poles, and Putin, very few world leaders want to get his back or offer cover. Most elected Republicans in town would privately prefer Pence. And finally, there's M&M, Bob Mueller, and big media.
Oh, M is media?
Mueller and media. Bob Mueller, and media. All coming through every meeting, business deal, and foreign contact by Trump and staff. For the moment, the congressional Republicans stay quiet and muscle through because they want their tax reform and they need a president to sign it. But when stuff really hits the fan, he will have no support.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
He also says, Mike Allen in writing this, Trump increasingly questions the loyalty of everybody, including his own staff and personal lawyer.
Sure.
And so you can expect him to be isolated and walking around the White House in his bathrobe screaming at people, basically.
He doesn't have a
Which is what I added. He didn't say that, I did.
Okay.
Okay. Now, people internally in the White House think the leaks came either from Democrats on the Hill or from the FBI, or perhaps both. However, the second New York Times story pegs sources as 3 advisors to the White House.
Right.
That set everybody on edge. They all assume it's the other guy. They're all pointing their fingers at each other. And it's all like you can't walk into a room without putting your back to the wall because like nobody trusts nobody.
Yeah. Advisors to the White House. That could be anybody.
Right?
Right.
Even the most Kool-Aid drinking Trumpers admit it's a PR disaster. Many are quick to say how stupid Don Jr. is. All say there's no crime. Tellingly, we've heard nobody in the Trump orbit question the ethics of him taking that meeting, which is what I'm saying and what you're saying. They're concentrating on, it wasn't a crime, but nobody's saying, it was really stupid to do that and was wrong. Nobody's saying that. They're saying it's stupid, but they're not saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
Which is what's wrong with them.
True. Although some people might just not know it and some people might just say, well, I don't know. Is it even really worth my time to talk about ethics and Trumps?
Yeah, ridiculous, right? So, Donald Trump to Sean Hannity, in retrospect, I probably would have done things a little different. Trump tweets, my son Donald did a good job last night, open, transparent, and innocent. Yeah, he's transparent. We can see he's a crook. Right? This is the greatest witch hunt in political history, said Rachel Maddow said this is either the end of things or things are about to get very weird.
They'll get weird.
The public has not laid eyes on a president since his return from Europe Saturday. Basically, he spent 4 days doing nothing and then he's off to France.
What? He's going to France?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
He'll be in Paris with some guy who's about the same age as Don Jr. Like, I think they're 10 days apart. 39 or something. And Macron is seen as an adult who is president of a country.
Yes.
And Don Jr. is seen as a little kid. You got to forgive him. He's naive and he didn't know. And, you got to let the kid off the ropes.
Right.
Same age.
Oh. Well, age is just
saying,
a number, man. Whatever. What's that say? Okay. Well, would they like to trade?
Right. Exactly. So that's what's happening in the White House. It's a firestorm and people are still dealing with the firestorm-ishness of it today. And it's only getting worse. And of course, we still don't know what Bobby Three Sticks knows.
Right.
If we know this much, what does he know? A lot more.
Yeah. I would guess so. It must be hard to keep your, he's practiced at it, keeping his tongue, but.
Right. And again, here's why I like Axios, because, there's always interesting things in here. There's an article here about the Senate parliamentarian to decide what can go in the health bill this week. That's their job.
This is an Axios? The same thing? Where?
Yeah. They've had a number of, really interesting pieces here.
I guess you can just keep scrolling forever. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But I just thought it was, that's a good one. I'll find that for you.
I'm looking.
And I'll just give you a link. It's kind of hard. You have to.
Oh my God, I have to scroll. There's all these pictures.
I know, but let me just give it to you so you can find it.
All right.
There it is at the bottom.
Okay. Click. It's not going. All right, here we go.
I thought things that had to do with the parliamentarian were interesting.
Yes, I think so too. I wanted to catch up on that. If I had kept scrolling, I would have seen this.
Yeah, eventually.
How does Axios?
It's a really hard site to navigate. You really have to find the pieces you want to see because otherwise you can get lost really easy.
I feel like Paul Manafort. I couldn't
This
make
is very
it down
short,
that
but
far.
what it says, the Senate Republicans and Democrats are debating the GOP healthcare bill this week before the parliamentarian who will then decide if certain provisions comply. They'll debate Tuesday through Thursday. Her opinion's expected before the bill goes to the floor next week. That means she decides this week.
Yeah. Can she decide whether there was treason or not?
No. It's all about bird rule. This is the bird bath.
Right. Well, you might be able to do treason under reconciliation. It's possible. Okay.
Okay. So Cruz and Lee's proposal to let insurers offer some plans that don't comply might not make it. Pro-life provisions in the healthcare bill might not make it. And those are two of the bigger ones to keep an eye on.
All right. Well, I know she's not supposed to keep these things, take these things into consideration, but I would suggest that if it's a toss-up and, could go either way, default by saying, why not set the precedent in favor of the side not doing treason?
Yeah, that's true. So here's what we're hearing, says yet another different Axios piece.
Oh my God. How far do I have to
Medicaid
scroll for
portions
this?
of the revised bill likely will stay largely the same as the first version, so the bill isn't changing all that much.
Right. We talked about that yesterday.
Okay.
It can't.
The loss for moderates, including Heller, Portman, Capito, Murkowski, Sullivan, Hoban, and Collins. And
Who's
a big
a
win
moderate?
for conservatives, especially Pat Toomey. A
Patoomy.
small tweak lets Louisiana benefit in some way. That'll help with Cassidy. But Lindsey Graham, at the same time, is talking about working on an alternative health care bill with a lot of Democrats. And Bloomberg has a piece that says senators explore bipartisan Plan B to trouble GOP health bill, assuming the first one fails. And the word you hear on the street is they're going to make these changes, and they're still going to have a bill. They might even put repeal only on the table next week because they may not still have the votes they need to get this one done because nothing's really changed.
Yeah. It's going to be tough.
So that's going to be interesting. And of course it changes by the hour. But if on the one hand, McConnell is now talking about putting the repeal only bill on the table, and on the other hand, they're also talking about a bipartisan stabilization bill with Democrats, that means that they're dealing with the fact that what they're doing is failing.
Okay.
That on top of putting the August recess off so they can get some of this stuff done and then start working on other things. It's not a done deal until it's a done deal. I'm telling you that the whole idea of you think it's all kabuki and they're just going to go ahead and do what the House did, it's a completely different dynamic. It's
Okay.
not the House, and the dynamic right now is not the same. And Trump has no clout.
Yeah. Well, and less every day.
Unless every day. And that all matters.
And now senators can, openly, if they want to, they usually just do it in the background, take into consideration all of that which the parliamentarian will try not to take into account in making their decisions. All right, fine, this gets a vote, but how will I vote? Well, if it's a toss-up.
You're asking me to vote for treason care?
Yeah, that's a problem. Especially, I mean, imagine it. If it goes nowhere, fine. I mean, the whole treason thing. But, yeah, in hindsight, for instance, imagine what it would have been like, being asked to take a close vote to be the one to put, some Nixon program over the top at the height of the Watergate investigation and say, do I go out on a limb for this guy?
So you got people on Fox News attacking the Fox anchors for ignoring or denigrating the collusion thing with Russia. You have Charles Krauthammer saying this is a big deal and you can't ignore it. You have somebody who is a military guy telling Tucker Carlson that he's just like Lindbergh in 1938.
Oh.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And Carlson got all pissed off about it. How dare you? That kind of thing.
How dare we, by the way? I'm not certain how we dare.
Says who?
Well, yeah, okay. He's a big how dare you guy, Mr. Furrowed Brow.
Right, there
Terrific.
you go. But, what I'm saying is that the atmosphere is different, things are happening. That's really what I'm trying to give you the whole big gestalt picture up here.
Yes, all right. Well, Krauthammer, that's nothing to sneeze at. Who was the second person who said this? Who made Tucker Carlson so angry? I didn't catch that.
Oh, I could find that, I'm sure.
It may matter. I don't know. Krauthammer would be the name that weighs heavier, I think. It's longer and has more
Tucker
consonants.
Carlson, 1938. Let's Google that and see what we get here.
Got a picture of his bow tie, probably.
Right, probably. I know that I had it in my
is it in around it?
So I could go find it that way.
Okay.
There he goes. Tucker Carlson interview goes sideways when guest accuses him of defending Putin. And this is in Business Insider.
Okay.
So I will just copy that link
work,
and send it over to you and tack it on at the end. This is a working list that David and I keep with each other.
Yes.
Fox News personality Tucker Carlson got in a heated debate with news analyst and former U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters on Tuesday after Peters suggested Carlson was being sympathetic to 30s Nazi Germany.
I can see where that would
I don't know why Carlson took offense at this.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, that usually triggers people pretty good. You're like Hitler. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Ralph Peters, I don't know. I hear. Oh yeah, Bill just found it too. I have no idea who that is. I mean, I got context. They said he was a retired.
Yeah, I'm not
colonel.
vouching for Putin's character. He seems like a shady guy, a strong man for sure. Hard to see why he's a threat to us. Why not just accept the fact that people who are bad people share our interests and side with them? And Peters said, "You sound like Lindbergh in '38, saying Hitler hasn't attacked us."
Okay. Right. He accused him of being Lindbergh, not Hitler.
I beg your pardon, Carlson said, slow down. Hey, slow down, Colonel. You can't compare me to someone who can make apologies for Hitler. And I don't think Putin is comparable to Hitler.
This is where we are now.
Said, I think Putin is.
Okay. Well, all right.
It was a great discussion.
I guess
See, the point of all of this, despite the fact that Tucker Carlson is an idiot,
how dare you accuse me of being Charles
News viewers are hearing this.
That is true.
They are hearing people challenge the idea that this is a nothing burger. They are hearing people challenge that there's no story here. And they're hearing it hourly because on each different show, somebody else is saying, whether it's Krauthammer on a different show or whether it's somebody challenging Tucker Carlson on this show, a military guy no less, that they're hearing it. And once you start to hear it, that's where the cracks in the base come from. Because they're starting to hear it on networks that they watch.
That's interesting. And Roger Ailes is dead, so this may continue.
Exactly. So
Two good reasons to be optimistic. Roger Ailes is dead,
right?
And there's another one.
So is your Generalissimo Franco. He's dead too.
Right. That's true. I was thinking about Franco the other day when I read that really fantastic article from The Philosopher about what was it? The Identity series that we were talking about, that you gave me, and I realized he had pointed out about Western civilization questions.
Right. So this goes on the whole back and forth with Carlson and Peters is here in this Insider Report, the Business Insider Report. It's really very funny. Let's just be totally honest here. We don't always know the outcomes, and maybe we should lower the moral tone a little bit rather than calling people accommodation, as Carlson said. You made your career being an American conservative patriot, said Peters, and now you're suddenly cheering for Vladimir Putin?
He's good.
I'm not in any sense cheering. I'm cheering for America. Our interests always come first. I'm in favor of that. Making sweeping moral claims, grotesque ones, comparing people to Hitler, advances the ball, not one inch. Putin is comparable, said Peters. He hates America. He wants to hurt us. I'm sorry. All of this suddenly Vladimir Putin is a good guy. Russia's okay. It's not. Russia's evil. Russia is our enemy. You're not talking about dealing with him. You're talking about an anti-terror alliance. So they had a pretty heated exchange. It was actually a pretty good one. Again, it was apparently the exchange lasted over 6 minutes. And Carlson says to Peters, and you speak Arabic, by the way? And Peters says, no, I don't. How's your Russian?
All right. Good. Carlson is terrible.
That was actually a wonderful exchange.
That is excellent. Okay. Well, he's doing very well. Maybe we should have heard of Ralph Peters, or maybe this may be the last we ever hear of Ralph Peters.
It's like Rick Wilson on Twitter is dealing with all of these Trumpkins, and Trumpanzees, whatever you want to call them. And they're tweeting him about how he was a traitor to the U.S., and, he needs to stand up and be a real patriot. And Wilson usually responds with something along the lines of, thank you for the pointers, comrade. The whole idea that, it's suddenly patriotic to side with Putin is a thing. And it's just interesting to see it called out. And again, I go back to, this is stuff we know. This is like mildly amusing. The point is it's happening on Fox News where the Trump base is seeing it all the time. Yeah. That'll be a big deal.
Interesting. And a good point, by the way, the end of one of the Peters comments, you're not talking about dealing with them, you're talking about an anti-terror alliance, you're talking about the capacity in which we will cooperate. Possibly with Russia.
Let's just give them all our cybersecurity so we can work together on this.
Okay. Well, we shouldn't go that far, obviously, but
Trump suggested we do, and then he suggested we don't.
Maybe, depending on what he's supposed to have meant by that tweet.
And the funny thing is, he put out Steve Mnuchin to push it, and then right after he did that, said, "We're not doing that."
Mnuchin's rich; he doesn't care.
Well, obviously none of them care. Otherwise, they wouldn't be working for Trump in the first place.
Right.
But, it just highlights the fact that it's almost impossible to work for this guy for those reasons. Because whether it's the Republican Congress who took a very difficult vote in the House, whereby just a few votes, they passed the AHCA and put their neck on the line in the next 2018 election with a horrible bill that everybody hates. Everybody meaning it only has 17% support or 12% support, depending upon who you ask. And then Trump says this was a really mean bill, and he throws the entire Republican House under the bus about 5 minutes after they do this for him, making everybody in Washington who's a Republican not want to have anything to do with this guy if they don't have to. You have him now throwing his cabinet members, not for the first time, under the bus because he doesn't have any thought behind what he's doing. There's no philosophy. It's what did somebody tell me in the last 5 minutes and how is it good for me? They know it. We know it. It's no governance philosophy. And by the way, even the New York Times now recognizes Republicans are having trouble with governance. So that's how I tie all of this stuff together. And with that, this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. Hopefully John will be on and she'll give you more details of what's really going on with healthcare. But I think we're winning this. Not that we can let up, but I think we're winning.
Yeah, well, your pressure tactics work more than ever now, and they have they can be supplemented by the pressure being brought to bear on Republicans politically by the revelations of treason. So,
yeah,
hey.
Pretty much. Anyway, a lot more in the Pundit Roundup today if you want to look. And, of course, we got this lovely picture of the Trump family.
Yes.
I should have had them all in a boat out on Lake Tahoe, but I didn't get that far. I did see somebody else, though. It was very funny. They had a picture of the Trump family, and everybody had a Fredo mustache.
Why not?
Why not? Because, we're all Fredo now.
Yep.
All right. Take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Very good. We'll wait for that. And thanks for wrapping things up here. I see the president is anger tweeting again. Everybody's retweeting him now.
Oh, good. What's he saying?
He's saying, well, I think so far the funny part is, one, he says right now, the White House is functioning perfectly.
Yeah, just the way I want it.
Focused on health care, tax cuts, /reform, and many other things.
The picture of the dog in the burning buildings sipping coffee saying everything's fine.
The funnier part is that he concludes, for some reason, by saying, I have very little time for watching TV, which I don't know what that says. Does that mean, is he complaining? We're working
I'm really upset. I don't have time to watch Fox and
we're working on so many things
SpongeBob.
I can't watch TV.
I'm really, really upset.
Of course, Tom Tomorrow pointing out that at 8:38 he complains about something he just saw on TV, and at 8:39 he denies he watches TV.
Right.
So,
exactly.
okay. I don't really know what that was supposed to mean. Obviously, the idea that the White House is functioning perfectly is ridiculous. He keeps going back to the tax cuts and reform thing, which I don't know if that's supposed to be is that a giveaway that the health care bill is really a tax cut bill, or does he still labor under the illusion that there is a separate tax bill in the works? I'm not sure, but that's not true yet. So I don't know. Anyway, it's something TV. And look, tomorrow is Thursday. You should be golfing by this point tomorrow.
I suppose. I just gave you the Oliver Willis tweet after I just said that. I just saw it where he tweeted the White House is functioning perfectly, and there's the dog drinking coffee in the burning building.
Okay.
It's at the very bottom of your list. It's
that
just
must
very
be
funny.
why I just saw. Yeah. Oh, Oliver Willis has just it's his own follow-up. Is the all is well, remain calm.
Yes, exactly, from Animal House.
Right.
So it's all good. All right. Take care. I'll talk to you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'll talk to you tomorrow. By the way, if anyone is liable to be looting the food king, it would certainly be Donald Trump. Anyway, let's see if we can catch up. I have to keep my Twitter screen caught up, or we'll not. We'll miss the next crazy tweet on it and movie reference. Here's Joshua Holland weighing in with "It's just a flesh wound." You get the idea. So live, real-time panic at the White House. All right. Well, let's see. We'll see if we can squeeze in that one morning story about there's more. Justice Putnam. I know that guy. Let's see. That's what Greg just sent me, one of your tweets, Justice. Let's see. Also in response, like a well-oiled machine. Where did you get this? Oh my gosh. Surveillance still going. I'll share it with you because you'll see why I'm laughing. It's a surveillance video of a warehouse somewhere. I guess a forklift driver who has an unfortunate accident as he's driving around. You got to see it for yourself. He just takes down an entire aisle of, oh my gosh. Anyway, good slapstick. You'll have to see that one. I'll share it with you. We may even put that one in the roundup. Good find there, Justice. Thanks very much, Greg, for forwarding that one. Let's see. I thought we might, you know what? I don't even have Pocket open yet. It's that kind of day. There's just too much happening live. I can't even get to what I put aside for you an hour ago. The big story of the morning, I guess before the president started his rage tweeting, was that, let's see, Trump, Russia, there we are. The Trump, Russia investigators probing Jared Kushner-run digital operation. McClatchy, once again, scoring the most interesting and probing substantive angle on the investigations this morning. But before I even take a look at that one, I just have to point out, I think I saw Brian Beutler just tweeting, and it reminding me, I saw the clip the other day of the NBC News interview with the Russian lawyer, Veselnitskaya, if I remember the name correctly. I saw it out of the corner of my eye, the clip. Does she not speak English? Or is just Russian is her first? No, she must speak English. She's a Facebook page. But I guess maybe she wasn't comfortable. Well, it is an interesting thing. She wasn't comfortable, I guess, giving her answers in English. You can understand that. You want to fall back on your first language when you're getting yourself in legal trouble. But did she bring a translator with her to the meeting? That is an interesting thing, because Beutler seemed to be making the point that it would be more difficult, for instance, to have a meeting with a Russian agent slip your mind if she spoke Russian to you throughout the meeting. And maybe that was the other person, because I did note yesterday that in the release of the emails from Donald Trump yesterday, and then finally their publication in the New York Times as well, Rob Goldstone makes reference to the fact that 2 people will be coming to the meeting, but that he'll be escorting her to the meeting, but won't sit in on the meeting. So the big question is, who's person number 2 in all this? I haven't seen that addressed yet, but it's been a busy morning. I wonder if it was a translator. It would be awfully difficult to forget a Russian-speaking person, although obviously maybe he actually thought she wasn't a Russian agent or connected with the Kremlin. I think that's probably willful blindness on his point. Anyway, let me get to this other thing here before we have, but by all means, by the way, Joan, if you're itching to come on, you're absolutely welcome to do so. We can discuss this as well, and you don't even have to cover the healthcare thing. I should offer you the option of vacationing from healthcare, but we really do have to cover that stuff. McClatchy's story today, who's writing it? Peter Stone and Greg Gordon. Some very easy for me as an American names to pronounce. I'm thankful for that anytime I see it. Trump Russia investigators probe Jared Kushner-run digital operation. This gets us back to the Cambridge Analytica world that I've been dying to see dissected in all of this. Investigators at the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Oh, interesting. It's not even the Mueller people. And the Justice Department. Oh, okay. Everybody's in on this one. I should probably read an entire sentence at some point before I react. Investigators at the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and the Justice Department are examining whether the Trump campaign's digital operation, overseen by Jared Kushner, helped guide Russia's sophisticated voter targeting and fake news attacks on Hillary Clinton in 2016. This long suspected, of course, recall that we've read articles on the air before that have made the point that it's unlikely that the Russians would have known what to do with their propaganda in terms of targeting it. Where should they be pointing it in order to have the greatest impact? And that was the job, that was the reason for being of Cambridge Analytica, and Jared Kushner was the one in charge of doing that targeting coordination. I don't know whether he knew what to do, or maybe he just knew who to ask what to do. But depending on who's telling the story and in what context, if it's a friendly interview about Jared Kushner being a genius and we got to put him in the White House, even though he doesn't know anything about how any of this stuff works, then it's I was in charge of it. If it was, if you're charging me with a crime, then look over there. I was just taking their advice. Congressional and Justice Department investigators are focusing on whether Trump's campaign pointed Russian cyber operatives to certain voting jurisdictions in key states, areas where Trump's digital team and Republican operatives were spotting unexpected weaknesses in voter support for Hillary Clinton, according to several people familiar with the parallel inquiries. Also under scrutiny is the question of whether Trump associates or campaign aides had any role in assisting the Russians in publicly releasing thousands of emails hacked from the accounts of top Democrats at turning points in the presidential race, mainly through the London-based transparency website WikiLeaks. That's a very generous description of what they do, but okay. Representative Adam Schiff of California, ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, told McClatchy he wants to know whether Russia's fake or damaging news stories were coordinated in any way in terms of targeting or in terms of timing or in terms of any other measure with the Trump campaign. By Election Day, an automated Kremlin cyber attack of unprecedented scale and sophistication had delivered critical and phony news about the Democratic presidential nominee to the Twitter and Facebook accounts of millions of voters, many in swing states, even in key precincts. Russia's operation used computer commands known as bots to collect and dramatically heighten the reach of negative or fabricated news about Clinton, including a story in the final days of the campaign accusing her of running a pedophile ring at a Washington pizzeria. You know that story. One source familiar with Justice's criminal probe said investigators doubt Russian operatives controlling the so-called robotic cyber commands, bots, come on, okay, whatever, that fetched and distributed fake news stories could have independently known where to specifically target, to which high-impact states and districts in those states. All of the sources spoke on condition of anonymity because of the investigation led by Special Counsel Robert Mueller. And that, of course, because the investigation is confidential. That's why they wanted anonymity. Top Democrats on the committees investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election have signaled the same. Schiff said he wants the House panel to determine whether Trump aides helped Russia time its cyber attacks or target certain voters, and whether there was any exchange of information, any financial support funneled to organizations that were doing this kind of work. Trump's son-in-law Kushner, now a senior advisor to the president and the only current White House aide known to be deemed a person of interest in the Justice Department investigation, is that right? I don't think I was even aware of that designation, appears to be under the microscope in several aspects. His real estate finances and December meetings with Russia's ambassador and the head of a sanctioned state-controlled bank are also being examined. Kushner's role as a possible cutout or conduit for Moscow's influence operations in the elections, including his niche overseeing the digital operations, will be closely looked at, said the source knowledgeable about the Justice Department inquiry. Kushner joined Donald Trump Jr. and Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort at the newly disclosed June 2016 meeting with a Russian lawyer at Trump Tower in New York. The meeting, revealed by the New York Times, followed emails in which Trump Jr. was told the lawyer for the Russian government would provide him with incriminating information on Clinton, and he replied, "If it's what you say, I love it." That disclosure could only serve to heighten interest in whether there was digital collaboration. Mike Carpenter, who in January left a senior Pentagon post where he worked on Russia matters, also has suspicions about collaboration between the campaign and Russia's cyber operatives. There appears to have been significant cooperation between Russia's online propaganda machine and individuals in the United States who were knowledgeable about where to target the disinformation, he said, without naming any American suspects. Trump has repeatedly repudiated or equivocated about the finding of 4 key intelligence agencies, the FBI, CIA, National Security Agency, and the Directorate of National Intelligence, that Russian cyber operatives meddled with the U.S. election. Last Friday, during their first face-to-face meeting, Trump questioned Putin, supposedly, about Russia's role in the election meddling, and Putin denied culpability, said Secretary of State Rex Everything Tillerson, who was present, and one of the few people who was. Trump said then the two countries should find ways to move forward in their relationship, Tillerson said. Meaningless throwaway line, except for the fact that, we should probably not find those ways to move ahead. A Russian official who was at the meeting said the two sides agreed to form a working group to address cybersecurity, including interference in other countries' internal affairs, However, Trump backtracked Sunday night, saying in a tweet that he doesn't believe such an effort can happen. I'm still not sure that Jameson Foster isn't correct about that, if I have the attribution correct there. I forget which one it was, who it was that said that. But check our back issues, if you will, and you can tell me, what did I say the other day? This stuff comes fast and furious. As more has been learned about the breadth of the Russian cyber onslaught, congressional Democrats have shown growing resolve to demand that the Republican-controlled intelligence committees fully investigate ways in which Trump associates may have conspired with the Russians. Among other things, congressional investigators are looking into whether Russian operatives who successfully penetrated voting registration systems in Illinois, Arizona, and possibly other states shared any of that data with the Trump campaign, according to a report in Time. That's what makes the reports of the elections being meddled with even in the primary season in Florida so much more interesting. I get the fact that the Russian intel services could figure out how to manipulate and use the bots, Virginia Senator Mark Warner told Pod Save America recently. Podcasters getting there doing this. Whether they could know how to target states and levels of voters that the Democrats weren't even aware of really raises some questions. How do they know to go to that level of detail in those kinds of jurisdictions? The Russians targeted women and African Americans in 2 of the 3 decisive states, Wisconsin and Michigan, where the Democrats were too brain dead, to realize those states were even in play, Warner said. Whew, that's tough talk from Mark Warner. Did he know? I mean, he may be including himself in that. I don't know. Twitter's and Facebook's search engines in those states were overwhelmed, he said, meaning they couldn't discern fake news from real news. On your news feed, and of course on your own news feed, it's really not supposed to. I mean, at that time, Twitter and Facebook search engines weren't built for, and they're still not really built for performing that task. You get what's popular in the timeline you choose for yourself, and that's the weakness. Anyway, on your news feed, you suddenly got Hillary Clinton's sick or Hillary Clinton's stealing money from the State Department, said Warner. It started even before Trump locked up the nomination. That's very true. Throughout the Republican primary elections in early 2016, Russia sent armies of bots carrying pro-Trump messages and deployed human trolls to comment in his favor on internet stories and in social media. Former FBI special agent Clint Watts told Congress weeks ago. Watts, now a cybersecurity specialist with the Foreign Policy Research Institute, said the targets included former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. As Donald Trump was locking up the Republican presidential nomination in May of 2016, a U.S. intelligence intercept picked up Russians discussing ways to spread news damaging to Clinton, 2 people familiar with the matter said. And then, of course, by June, they were meeting with Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., and Paul Manafort. Gee whiz. Anyway, no one has proved that Russia's attack influenced the vote count in the November 8th general election, so far, I would say, but it wouldn't have taken much to tip the results and change the course of history. Clinton lost the decisive states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by a combined 77,744 votes out of 13.9 million ballots cast. She could have won Michigan if 5,353 Trump voters had gone for her instead. She could have won Wisconsin, this continues, I'm reconstructing this sentence, if 11,375 votes had flipped to her, and Pennsylvania if 22,147 Trump voters had picked her instead. Kushner's pivotal role in the Trump cyber effort was underscored by his hiring in 2015 of Brad Parscale. Remember him? A Texas-based digital guru who previously had done work for the Trump Organization, said 2 GOP operatives familiar with the campaign. Parscale's company raked in about $90 million for work targeting many states with paid advertisements, social media messages, and other cyber tools. It does seem like an awful lot of money, doesn't it? As the Trump campaign's top digital director, Parscale ran much of the operation from his San Antonio offices. He's expected to appear before at least one of several congressional committees investigating aspects of Russia's interference in the election. Parscale could not be reached for comment. CNN quoted him last month as dismissing suggestions that Russian-directed online bots would have been effective in swinging votes to Trump. He said the campaign did not find Twitter, where those bots mainly functioned, to be an effective tool. Washington attorney Abby Lowell, who was recently hired to be Kushner's chief defense counsel and has a reputation as a guy, if you hire, you're going to do battle with the government, I see, according to one former federal prosecutor, declined to comment on the Russia inquiries facing Kushner. Shortly after his name arose in the inquiry, Kushner publicly volunteered to tell Congress about his Russia contacts and to answer questions about all issues for which he's being scrutinized. So once he was caught, he volunteered to tell them about all of these things, and then he didn't. Okay. Another of Kushner's lawyers, Jamie Korelic, says he will cooperate with both congressional and Justice Department investigations. However, no interview date has been set, and Kushner's attorneys declined to say whether he has produced records sought by the Senate Intelligence Committee. Okay. So all very interesting, and I'm glad that they're turning their attention his way and to the way of the digital operation. I do think that that's pretty important. There was some dispute over what exactly it was that should be gleaned from the McClatchy article. I noticed that Josh Marshall and Justin Miller going back and forth a little bit about this one. Justin Miller having concluded that Russia had the Dem voter files that detailed precinct data, and the feds were investigating precinct level targeting by the Trump digital operations. Marshall questioning that, saying, is that what it really said? Is Peace, rather, not Pierce. I'm like, did Charles Pierce weigh in on this? He probably did, but not yet. The piece was worded ambiguously, Josh thought, like it wasn't completely clear to him whether they were saying that they did have the files, or whether they might have had the files, or whether they wanted to probe whether they might have had the files. That's pretty interesting and a good question. Justin Miller actually answers, the first part I said refers to this. Okay. And now pointing to a second article here, how the alleged Russian hackers teamed up with a Florida GOP operative. Lots going on in Florida, and the Russian hacker we're talking about, once again, Guccifer 2.0. It's a Wall Street Journal article. Let's see if it opens up for me or whether it's behind a firewall this morning, and see if we can't fill in that part of the picture. Alexandra Berzon and Rob Barry reporting on this. Is this a current piece? This is a little older, May 25th. Of this year. The hacking spree that upended the presidential election wasn't limited to Democratic National Committee memos and Clinton aide emails posted on websites. The hacker also privately sent Democratic voter turnout analyses to a Republican political operative in Florida named Aaron Nevins. This did come up, and I think Greg brought this, an article like this, if not this one, to our attention at some point. Learning that hacker Guccifer 2.0 had tapped into a Democratic committee that helps House candidates, that would be the DCCC, and a little bit good segue that would make to the Florida story that Greg brought to our attention earlier today. Let's see. So learning that Guccifer 2.0 had tapped into the DCCC computers, Mr. Nevins wrote to the hacker to say, feel free to send any Florida-based information. So right away, he's actually looking for target. He's giving Guccifer instructions on how to target, or how he will target if he can get this information. 10 days later, Mr. Nevins received 2.5 gigabytes of Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee documents, some of which he posted on a blog called Florida, FLA, hellofla.com, that he ran using a pseudonym. Soon after, the hacker sent the link to the blog article to Roger Stone, a longtime informal advisor to then-candidate Donald Trump, along with Mr. Nevins' analysis of the hacked data. Maybe this is the link. Mr. Nevins confirmed his exchanges after the Wall Street Journal identified him first as the operator of the Hello FLA blog and then as the recipient of the stolen DCCC data. The Journal also reviewed copies of exchanges between the hacker and Mr. Nevins. That the obscure blog had received hacked Democratic documents was previously known, but not the extent of the trove or the blogger's identity. I just threw an arrow in the dark, Mr. Nevins said in an interview. You don't throw arrows, but okay. Adding, he set up a Dropbox account so whoever was using the Guccifer 2.0 name could send large amounts of material. Later, going through what the hacker sent as someone who actually knows what some of those documents mean, the GOP consultant said he realized it was a lot more than even Guccifer knew that he had. Interesting. The episode shows how the hacker's activities extended to exposing Democrats' GOTV, get out the vote strategies, in swing states and informing a Trump ally of hacked data during the national campaign. U.S. officials believe Guccifer 2.0 is linked to Russian military intelligence. He denies that. That person, Guccifer 2.0, denies it, but so what? The moniker appeared in hacks last year and isn't the same as a Romanian hacker who had earlier used the Guccifer name, hence, I guess, the 2.0. The FBI counterintelligence inquiry and congressional committees are looking into alleged Russian interference. We know about that. The Kremlin denies meddling, including any link to Guccifer 2.0. Mr. Stone has come under scrutiny in counterintelligence inquiry. People familiar with the matter said. In an interview, Stone denied any involvement with the Russians related to elections, yada yada. Well, maybe he's being specific there. And said he hadn't been contacted by the FBI. He confirmed that Guccifer 2.0 sent him a link to the Hello FLA blog article last year, but said he didn't share any hacked material with it from anyone. He just pointed people to it, I guess. On his own website, Mr. Stone has posted screenshots of text messages he exchanged with Guccifer 2.0 last summer. DCCC documents sent to Mr. Nevins analyzed specific Florida districts, showing how many people were dependable Democratic voters, how many were likely Democratic voters but needed a nudge, how many were frequent voters but not committed, and how many were core Republican voters, the kind of data strategists use in planning ad buys and other tactics. There it is. The Journal reviewed these documents as well as Democratic voter analyses also sent to Mr. Nevins about congressional districts in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. The DCCC last summer confirmed a cyber intrusion but hasn't been specific about what was taken. Asked for comment, the communications director there, Meredith Kelly, said federal law enforcement, the intelligence community, and members of both parties agreed Russia intervened in the presidential and House contests, a reason for a bipartisan independent commission to investigate. Besides posting some of the hacked material on his blog, Mr. Nevins has said he passed some on to Florida journalists. He said he didn't use any in his consulting business, which includes running grassroots-style campaigns for corporations and wealthy landowners seeking to influence local politics. Mr. Nevins said the Hello FLA blog, which focuses on Tallahassee political gossip, gets at best 100 readers a day, and he runs it as a hobby. In hopes of a scoop, he said he reached out to Guccifer 2.0 on August 12th after seeing a newspaper article about a hack of the DCCC. Oh, I read about your hack. Can I have the information? The hacker using the Guccifer 2.0 name, getting the sense that this is like the Dread Pirate Roberts at this point, had invited journalists to send questions via Twitter direct messages, which Mr. Nevins did. Seeing that some of what Guccifer 2.0 had was months old, Mr. Nevins advised the hacker that releasing fresher documents would have been a lot more impact. In other words, attention Russia, if you're listening, I need updated voter files, not these old ones. More impressed after studying the voter turnout models, Mr. Nevins told the hacker, basically, if this was a war, this is the map where all the troops are deployed. Okay, so now we're getting into war territory. Yay, thanks for bringing us back to treason. Excellent point, sir. At another point, he told the hacker this is probably worth millions of dollars, like about 90, perhaps, if you had to put a figure on it. Guccifer 2.0 responded, okay, you owe me $1 million. Little smiley face emoticon there. Democrats, Mr. Nevins wrote, spent millions probably to figure out who these people are that are conducive to their message. Wrong word. And now it's exposed for the other side. Mr. Stone, to whom Guccifer sent that analysis along with the link to the blog article with DCCC data, wrote to the hacker that the file was pretty standard. Screenshots of Mr. Stone's messages show it's impossible to know whether the hack affected the outcome of any elections. I did adjust some voting targets based on some data I saw from the leaks, said Anthony Bustamante, a campaign consultant to Republican congressional candidate Brian Mast. Mr. Bustamante said the Democratic voter analyses led him to amp up some of his TV ad buys and reduce some mailed materials ahead of the November election. Mr. Mast won a House seat, previously Democratic, well, it says Democrat, held in Florida's 18th district near Palm Beach. After publication, a spokesman for Mr. Mast said Mr. Bustamante stopped working for the Mast campaign on June 30th, 2016, before the release of the hacked data, and said he hadn't made ad buys for the campaign. Okay, come on. Asked about that, Mr. Bustamante said he continued to advise the campaign informally after June. Somebody's lying about that, obviously. Let's see. What else have we here? Representatives of the Florida Republican Party and the National Republican Congressional Committee didn't respond to requests for comment. Mr. Nevins said he hasn't been contacted by any investigators about last year's political hacking. Let's see if we can change that. He isn't convinced the Russians were behind it, Mr. Nevins said. Sure he is. But even if they were, it doesn't matter to him because the agenda of the hackers seemed to match his own. If your interests align, he said, never shut any doors in politics, which is, of course, exactly the line that they're testing out on the national level now. Not the way it works. But, you know, if you win and you get to make the laws that decide how it does work, then I guess you can manipulate things that way. Very interesting. I haven't seen the end of the exchange between Josh Marshall and Justin Miller just yet, but I think that might be, I don't know, maybe that is the end of it. If I were Josh Marshall, I'd now be convinced, yeah, it sounds like they did have the material after all. Okay, I think that answers the question. This is not looking good, but again, we do have this problem. If you win those elections and you get to determine what's legal and illegal as a result, it's often very difficult to convict you of anything. And if you can't convict people of anything, there'll be people out there being apologists for it. Sure, it was illegal at the time. Sure, it was immoral. Sure, it was unethical. Sure, it was un-American. But, hey, what are you going to do about it? We'll send you to a re-education camp if you don't like it. And then what do we do? I don't know. So, let's see. I guess until we get assigned to re-education camps, we should catch up on, it almost seems like it's a disservice to all of us to turn our attention to questions of, well, what will all these people who cheated their way into office be doing with their legislative powers now? But I guess we have to deal with that. And, I guess it makes it all the more important to defeat this major initiative. It was always important anyway, as a matter of, well, life and death for some 24 million of us. But in addition, it might be a good idea to throw a roadblock up in this just politically and put the brakes on everything. And by the way, it's probably also time for us to start calling for Neil Gorsuch to recuse himself from every Supreme Court proceeding from here on in. But I'm sure he will not comply with that one. Let's catch up with Joan McCarter, who's here to join us. Hi, Joan. It's a little crazy out there. How are you doing?
It's a little crazy out there. Good morning.
Yeah, it's morning. I'll agree with that. But I'm going no further. No comment on whether it's good or not. But thank you for you were just hoping
That's
it
fair.
would be good.
That's perfectly fair.
Okay. I think I wish you a good morning as well. I think that's fair enough. So what the hell should we talk about? I mean, I just said that we shouldn't be talking about the healthcare issue, but that's obviously not true. We have to, but it all needs to be discussed in the context of we're fighting a battle with people who shouldn't even legitimately be there in the first place, and that's infuriating. But I hope it will just make you fight that much harder, so that we can A, block this nonsense, B, continue with the investigation, and C, drag these people kicking and screaming from their offices, and I don't know what with them.
I would love to drag them kicking and screaming from their offices. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So,
and even if they don't,
in the immediate term,
I will kick and scream. How about that? Yes.
We've got to stop Trump care.
Okay. Treason care. Yes.
I like treason care.
Excellent label, I thought. And now I have to look back and see which of the many Erics I follow it was. I can only remember it was. Oh, my God. Eric said this. Which Eric was it again? I'll check that out because we ought to credit him.
I get a lot of Aries. I follow
Aries.
a
Okay.
ridiculous amount of Aries.
I got Jonathan's,
so you follow
Aries.
You've got the Aries covered.
Erics.
I'll keep the Aries.
Yes.
Okay.
So, all right. So where we are at do you want to summarize? Do you want to bring us up to speed on this? Do you want to switch tracks
Where
entirely?
we are, Mitch McConnell is going to release some form of a bill, which Republican senators are still grousing about having not seen
Right.
tomorrow. However, it is primarily what they've already seen.
Okay.
It still ends Medicaid as we know it, which is still the major problem with the bill.
Yes.
Politically, it's not quite as bad as it was 2 weeks ago because they are keeping the high income taxes.
They're keeping it. Okay.
So the repeal of the capital gains tax gone, even the Medicare tax, they're keeping those things so that McConnell has more money to give specifically to Louisiana in one case. Whether or not that gets Bill Cassidy, we don't know, but probably does. And also to boost up what they're calling a stabilization fund a little bit. And that's money to help reimburse folks for premiums. Those people who make $12,000 a year and are expected to come up with $6,000 deductibles will get a little bit of premium assistance.
Oh, all right.
So that's where, as far as we know now, the money's going. As Greg said earlier, we don't know yet whether the Cruz amendment will be allowed by the parliamentarian, so we don't know that that's in there. The moderates hate it. So here's a good excuse for McConnell to say, oh, well, sorry, Ted, can't have it. Whether that makes Cruz and Lee then jump ship, we don't know. Probably. Particularly if the tax cuts are not included. So basically we're no further ahead than we were 2 weeks ago, probably behind. Collins and Murkowski are saying what you're talking about isn't enough to get us. Heller has sort of gone incommunicado again. But he made a pretty strong statement against this with Brian Sandoval 2 weeks ago. So it's hard to see him backing down from that. As of now, it's looking like McConnell doesn't have the votes.
That's what it looks like. I did see, we read through sort of a dry but interesting analysis from CBPP yesterday, explaining pretty much that the impossibility, the mathematics of it just make it impossible to find the votes you need. The mathematics being where the money in the bill was shifting. If you move it one direction, you lose these guys. You move it in the other direction, you lose those guys. But it was an interesting analysis in the sense of, don't be fooled, for instance, by the most likely play, which would be to eliminate some of the tax cuts that were in there, and that would be the fig leaf that some moderates might need to say, well, now the optics of the bill is not quite as terrible.
Right.
But there are, I guess, several types of tax cuts built into the bill. Some of them are just naked, outright tax cuts, and others are sort of stealthy tax cuts in the sense that, lots of the money being returned to people this way because this or that provision of Obamacare would be part of the total repeal package. Once that gets done, there's still, I guess once there's repeal, they're going to be using that money, or making up for that money being given away in tax cuts by cutting important programs, obviously Medicaid and others.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff is kind of going out the back door anyway, and the bulk of the cuts are there. So, for instance, the capital gains stuff, it's just not worth that much money, and it doesn't undo any of the damage to Medicaid being done by the repeal or the body of the bill itself. You don't need to kill Medicaid in order to repeal Obamacare. They're just doing that for fun.
And because that gives them more room on future tax cuts.
Yes.
Not the tax cuts in this bill, but tax cuts coming down the road.
True also. Although why they keep, I don't know. Sometimes I'm confused by why they keep, it's interesting that they feel like they have to pay for tax cuts at some point. They used to just say, no, tax cuts pay for themselves.
Right.
And now
Tax
they're
cuts
saying,
and more. We don't have to pay for that.
That's true. But in case they don't, we'll pay for it by eliminating programs for the poor that help them survive. That way they won't be alive to march in the streets.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's Republicanism for you. By the way, update, Eric Cleefield is responsible for the tweet I saw anyway about treason care. Who knows whether that exists prior to that. And also, Bill in Portland, Maine volunteers to monitor all Joshuas from here on in. So, okay.
We've got 75% of Twitter covered.
Liberal Twitter is pretty well covered. If you've got Jonathans, Erics, Aries, and Joshuas, I think you may be done. One of them will be retweeting the rest of Twitter, I think. Pretty good. Now that's a job for Cambridge Analytica. You tell me, what an unusual way of organizing the internet, but I wouldn't be surprised if a digital analysis told us that we would get, cover like 78% of all traffic if you just did that. They're the money ballers of big data. And they got $90 million to do it. So, pretty good. All right. So, that's the state of play substantively with the bill. There's really nothing, we learned, there's really nothing you can do at this point short of starting over that solves any of the major problems with the bill. And any of the moderates who grasp onto this fig leaf of eliminating some of the tax cuts are really still saying, I am A, for the stealth tax cuts, and B, still unfazed by the elimination of Medicaid, which means 1, I'm not a moderate, and 2, I was kidding about being worried about eliminating 24 million people from the healthcare rolls.
Yeah.
So that's bad, but they are capable of doing that.
They are capable, but now they've got this new, and Greg talked about it a little bit, the push from Lindsey Graham.
Okay.
Creating a new bipartisan gang.
Everybody loves gangs.
Yeah, we know Lindsey Graham and his gangs. But this one is giving sort of a, fig leaf to the moderates. It's giving them an out, I guess.
Okay.
To say, all right, this doesn't pass. You try your repeal only. It's not going to pass. Here's a plan. We stabilize the Obamacare markets. Mm-hmm. We put money into that. And it's attracting some attention. So it's at least something that Republican senators can point to that they are doing. It probably also won't get 60 votes.
Okay.
But
is it terrible?
But it gives these Republicans who don't want to vote with McConnell on Trump care some room to say, look, this is what we're doing.
Okay.
Is it going to work? I don't know. Probably not.
When would we see? Is that what they would be doing in August if they don't do their recess? Or
if
hope
Graham has his way,
okay.
These are decisions.
That's
that
the
Mitch
timeline.
Makes.
I see. Yes, that's true. So that's the time that Graham would hope to convince McConnell to turn to that. I guess that might not be what McConnell thinks he's doing.
He might be doing it now. He's supposedly coming up with this plan tomorrow or Friday, at the same time that McConnell's releasing the latest version of Trump Care. And he might offer it as an amendment on the floor next week to Trump Care, maybe even as a substitute.
Okay. Yes.
But really right now that's still all kind of unknown. Whether McConnell does indeed bring it to the floor next week is unknown.
True also.
Because he's got to send it to the CBO again. And because they're not making any Medicaid changes, as Greg said earlier, it's not likely to look a whole lot better in terms of the number uninsured than the previous version.
Yes. And that, again, I guess part of yesterday's analysis, that's just core to what they're doing. And I suppose you don't, that should come as no surprise. If the idea was repeal only or repeal and replace, I mean, if Obamacare in the end insured some 20 million people, then then repealing it, whether you replace it or not, will threaten the health care of all the people who got insurance because of Obamacare. That's just, you don't even need to do math there. 20 million equals 20 million.
Yeah.
So,
and possibly even more.
Right.
Because of the extent to which it would destabilize the individual insurance market.
Yeah. And,
so much of that has been rejiggered to fit Obamacare, to become Obamacare, the individual insurance market, and to be on the exchanges, that taking that whole structure away could cause a pretty major collapse of the individual insurance market, taking down more people even than got coverage through Obamacare.
And I imagine eventually
some
everybody
estimates
else.
are 32 million people losing insurance.
Oops.
Yeah.
Just as a direct consequence of the bill, I guess the unforeseen consequences may be, as it turns out, most of the insurance companies offering insurance to people on the individual market are the same insurance companies offering insurance to people on the employer-provided insurance market as well.
Yes.
Those are the insurance companies. There aren't any out there who say, I sell no one any individual insurance ever. It's the same players. And I guess for them, if one part of their market collapses, it's awfully likely that the rest of their markets will collapse too, and we'll all be feeling that one. But we've been reminded of that all along, that your insurance is in jeopardy no matter where you get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the great coverage you get under your insurance is in jeopardy. And we could be talking about pre-existing conditions coming back. We could talk about lifetime and even annual caps on what insurance companies will spend to save your lives coming back.
Well, nostalgia. We all love it.
Yeah. This is nostalgia that people are not going to be really, really happy to indulge in.
Oh well. What can you do?
Medical bankruptcies.
Yes.
Gonna be back.
Fun things.
Yeah.
All right. So they're set, they're determined to try anyway to ruin everything.
Adam Gentlison yesterday had some interesting speculation on why McConnell is doing this with the August recess. And he's a Nevada guy. He was Harry Reid's chief of staff. He sees it as McConnell being McConnell and punishing Dean Heller primarily.
Okay.
Because of all of the people who need a long August recess the most, Dean Heller is the top of the list. He's the most vulnerable running for re-election next year, and he needs this time back home. He needs to get out in front of his people. He needs to get his campaign together. And here's Mitch McConnell taking 2 weeks of that effort away from him. Whether it's, pure punishment for Heller, McConnell, it could be.
I guess. I imagine he probably thinks he derives some other benefit from it as well.
Probably. But it's not likely to make Heller feel any better toward his leader.
No.
Or anybody, really. And this is one of the interesting things behind all of this is what it's doing to McConnell as a leader. And I don't know how much Trump and Russia's gonna play into that feeling as well. I would think that some Republicans would be feeling a little bit exposed right now and a little bit resentful that McConnell didn't do more on the issue of Russia and Trump and the 2016 election. The fact that what he did do was detrimental to, our election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of the Republican conference that is even likely to feel that way. But again, with 52 seats, it doesn't take much, certainly in terms of stymieing their legislative agenda, such as it is. If you have 4 or 5 members of the Republican conference angry with, if not the way he handled it, then the weakness weak position that it puts Republicans as a party in,
Yes.
that's enough. It won't necessarily replace him as leader. You would need, of course, a majority of the Republican conference to do that, but that's not for us to. I don't think we can engineer that. That'll have to happen to them. But that will also come from continued ineffectiveness as a legislative leader. That we can affect.
Forcing them to take this very, very unpopular vote isn't going to help him.
That is true too. I don't know who. Well, I guess you could spend some time speculating on who might be McConnell's successor in leadership. If you want to take things that far, I guess it doesn't really matter very much.
No,
but it won't help things politically. And it really, I mean, there may be no advantage to it from a partisan perspective, which Republican leads that conference. I don't think it makes a difference to us. You're likely to get the same stuff handed to you by the Republicans in the Senate, no matter who.
So.
But it's damaging politically to have to start jettisoning leadership midstream. I don't think that's likely to happen, but the fact that rumors
an
of it
eroded McConnell is helpful.
Mm-hmm. And Trump does. The Trump team doesn't love McConnell much either, and it's the sort of thing. Certainly, if there were rumblings in the conference about dissatisfaction with McConnell as a leader, it's the sort of thing that Trump would seize on and tease McConnell with if they ever butted heads over anything.
Right.
So, all right. That's
Which,
interesting.
might be something behind Ted Cruz's new crawling up Donald Trump's behind, too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And here we have to count on Trump's legendary holding of grudges. It's questionable whether it's something people can come back from. I just did see something written up the other day about a House Republican who was involved in was engaged in a long-term campaign to try to get back in Trump's good graces after having abandoned him following the Access Hollywood tapes. And I can't remember who it was. A woman, a Republican woman from one of the southern states. It doesn't narrow things down, but it wasn't somebody I was familiar with. But that apparently she was working hard to rehabilitate herself. She was viewed, negatively by the White House and sort of being frozen out of things because, I don't know, the position, it's interesting that they're angry with her, like not, gee whiz, we shouldn't have put Republican women in this position by, we can't go back in time and undo the Access Hollywood tapes, but maybe we shouldn't have nominated this guy, period, because it would put our Republican women in an impossible position, because what else were they going to say about the Access Hollywood tapes back then? They're obviously going to say, yeah, it's inappropriate. Yeah, it makes me question whether he's an acceptable candidate at a minimum. But they're out to punish people who did what they had to do at the time, which is pretty amazing. But they don't have those kind of instincts, and I guess this is the trade-off when they keep saying dumb things like we need a businessman in the White House. Yeah, right. But he's going to make businessman mistakes, like not realize when it's time to swallow your pride and play the team game. At least. Oh,
I don't think that that's a businessman mistake. I think that's Trump being Trump.
That may be. It's true.
We can't say all businessmen.
That's true. And I guess more businessmen. Here we have a definitional problem. This came up in the earlier part of the show too. He's not really a businessman necessarily in the sense that we all think of it. I guess a CEO of a publicly traded company certainly knows more about the necessity of setting personal grievances aside. Not all of them are capable of doing it. And the worst ones, capable of the worst abuses, are egomaniacs. But, Trump has never in his business, such as it has, been responsible to anyone else. So there's a little bit of a misnomer there. But, in calling him a businessman. But certainly it would have been a bad idea if anybody had stopped to think about it, of putting an extraordinarily rich, inherited money egomaniac in the White House and saying he's a businessman and he's going to run everything like his stupid money-losing business. Yes, him in particular. All right. I guess we should not have been surprised about that. But, all right, so we can anticipate the sort of mistakes that he's likely to continue making.
Kind of. I mean, anticipating anything that's coming out of this administration.
Well, yes, right. Nothing in particular, but I guess the best you can do is say, well, if there's something absurd and self-defeating and totally unethical, that would meet the standards. I would, if you spell it out for me specifically. If it meets these three things, if it's unethical, possibly illegal, completely stupid, and and then damaging to the Republican Party, then yes. Now
you can count on Trump.
Right.
If it can be damaging to the Republican Party, I hate to be defeatist about this.
Oh well, yeah.
You keep thinking, what's it going to take? How much worse can it get? And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's astounding.
Well, yeah. And I guess here's a weird contradiction. I guess the longer that the Republicans in Washington remain incapable of producing any legislative results that damage people directly and they feel the pain, I suppose if you're not feeling direct pain, it might be possible to hold on longer as a pure Trump loyalist and excuse all the things that he does. So I don't know. Although I'm for preventing pain on people in real life, regardless, even if it means not rooting Donald Trump out of the White House. I'd love for that to happen too, but along the way, I'd like to kill the fewest of our fellow citizens who are relatively innocent in all of this.
You're such a liberal.
I'm a softie.
Yeah. Not killing people.
I don't know. It's not popular. You can't win in politics these days without promising to kill your fellow citizens. Everybody knows that. Happens to be true. I don't know why, but that's why Democrats are lost in the wilderness and so clueless. They're not hard enough on killing their fellow citizens. Got to get tougher. Apparently, that's the formulation I just gave it. I must be wrong.
I hope you're wrong, Kagro. I hope you're wrong. So that's what's up this week.
Okay.
Trying not to kill people.
Right.
And just waiting for, as John McCain would say, what shoes are going to drop next.
Yes.
I don't know how many shoes are going to have to pile up on John McCain for him to actually do something other than complain about it.
That's right. I don't believe Imelda Marcos herself could convince John to move on this. I dropped all the shoes. There's a million of them literally on your desk. Golly, I don't know. He'll just comment sardonically and go on about his business.
Book the next Sunday show.
Yeah. Not certain how that continues to happen, but what can you think the hosts ever wonder, why are you here again? How did this happen?
You wonder that too.
Are there other senators?
All of the interviewers he gets, all the reporters talking to him in the Senate hallways. And why? Why are you continuing to talk to him? You're not going to get anything new. Sure, you're going to get a salty quote. We're back to salty.
Yeah. The kids love the salty.
To what end?
I'm not sure. All right. Well, so let's see. One more, just to wrap up the timeline again. We'll see something that passes for a bill, tomorrow? Is that the target? Tomorrow.
Goes to the CBO.
Right.
We hear from the CBO early next week. You can't promise ever what day till the CBO tells you what day, but it'll probably be Monday. Mm-hmm. Probably. Possibly Tuesday. As of now, I think McConnell wants to have his first procedural vote Tuesday.
Okay.
With final votes Thursday or Friday.
Is Tuesday then the day that we would see the motion to proceed to considering the bill?
Possibly.
Okay, because that's the first
if it
opportunity.
Happens, if McConnell doesn't have to pull it again.
Oh, okay. I see. Yes. So Tuesday would be if they manage to get past the first couple hurdles. Oh, by the way, Greg had mentioned in all of this, we still also are talking about this running through the machinery at the parliamentarian's office.
Right.
Though we may not know ahead of time what their answers are the way we will with the CBO.
Right. And that's where the big question, I think even more than the CBO at this point, the big question of where does he get support? If he can't defund Planned Parenthood, if he can't include the Cruz-Lee amendment because of parliamentarian problems, and I'm thinking that probably that's what he's counting on. I think that he probably sent the Cruz-Lee amendment to the CBO for scoring, even though everybody else besides them hates it, just to sort of give himself just to tell Cruz and Lee, okay, look, I'm taking this seriously. Here's the CBO getting it. I don't think that he counted on it being in the bill. I think he in fact is counting on the parliamentarian to say it can't be, as his excuse to those two. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it could be. There's some relationship between what the parliamentarian will do and what the CBO will do, in the sense that occasionally the parliamentarian will have to be will be responsible for determining whether something is reconciliation eligible under the Byrd rule, and if the CBO says it's not got any direct budgetary impact as the primary aim, or if the number comes in so low that it can't possibly be considered the primary aim, then the parliamentarian will be leaning on the CBO and saying that won't be allowed.
Right.
So this does have to happen in some order. We may not find out what the parliamentarian had to say until there's a motion to proceed and it passes. It may be that the parliamentarian just kills the thing behind the scenes, and you may find then once word gets out what's going to be allowable and what isn't, or what could stand to lose, be subject to defeat by a point of order. That is to say, there's been advance notice from the parliamentarian to the senators quietly that something wouldn't pass muster. That doesn't do it by itself. The parliamentarian saying no, the way that's manifested in reality is the senator making a point of order against it and the parliamentarian advising the chair, I say no to this. But if a lot of the bill is going to be disallowed, we may just not see it come to the floor, other excuses being given for it, but perhaps a significant portion of the conference tells McConnell, I'll vote, if I find out that a lot of it is going to be killed anyway, then I'm not going to vote for the motion to proceed, because why bother?
Right.
And I know that there aren't enough votes anyway, and so you might as well just not do it. You're going to lose the motion to proceed. McConnell will realize that, and he'll just say, some reason I am not bringing the bill to the floor, and that'll be the last we hear of this attempt anyway. We just might not get a real
He's
explanation.
going to keep at it.
Yeah.
And there is always the possibility that he tries to bring repeal only. That's what Trump is pushing. I think that he has even less support for repeal only at this point.
Yeah.
Right now he's looking at 8 defections. I think repeal only, you're looking at 12, 15.
Well, and now I'm trying to guess whether McConnell sees any value in bringing votes repeatedly or nearly bringing votes repeatedly and having them collapse and lose. And I don't know whether he thinks he can make a dent in Trump's head by saying, I'm doing the things you're asking for and there's zero support for them. They're loser issues. Stop proposing them. Or whether Trump just doesn't get that kind of message and says, I don't know, they keep losing in Congress and that's him, so he's the loser.
Yeah.
Not me. I mean, he's not going to catch on.
The latter.
Yeah.
Trump's, yeah.
So at some point, McConnell, we ask, does he begin to realize that he's only damaging himself by giving people who either A, believe Trump, or B, don't understand politics, and that's very often the same people, more fuel, and he's just making himself look like a loser by bringing these things? I don't know what else he's got up his sleeve. After, is he excited to move to something else?
I don't know that he has anything up his sleeve. I mean, I keep going back to the Patriot Act in 2015 and how he completely misread that situation.
Yeah, I guess.
Bringing up vote after vote after vote and losing and losing and losing and being kind of humiliated. He thinks that the promise of repeal is so compelling to 52 Republican senators, or at least 50 Republican senators, that they've got to do it, and that's that. And that ultimately is going to be what drives them. What he's missing is that they also promised that they would keep all of the protections of Obamacare while they were going to repeal it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So, okay.
I can't begin to know what's going on in Mitch McConnell's head. It would be a terrifying thing if I did.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to wait don't just wait and see. Of course, continue to demand that things collapse by calling their senators.
Absolutely. The more we call, the better chance we have of McConnell being completely humiliated.
Yes. And by the way, those of you even without Republican senators, I mean, now would probably be, we may have laid off a little bit on calling our Democratic senators if you live in a state with only Democrats. I don't recommend that you call out of state. It hardly ever does anything. They barely pay attention to you as it is.
If you're in state,
right.
Yeah.
So don't call anybody from out of state. It just creates problems for both of you and wastes your time. But maybe
when a Democratic senator can stand on the floor and say,
yes,
the calls are coming into my office 20-1 against this, 100-1 against this, it helps.
Definitely does. And they love to be able to do that. And they are, honestly, they want you to call and give them that story to tell.
Yes.
The next question, just quickly before we wrap everything up, is now we start hearing rumblings about Democrats in the Senate saying, well, we want to encourage Republicans to scrap the whole thing and start over again on a bipartisan bill. Do we need to begin calling them and saying, I don't know if it's even a good idea for you to throw this lifeline to people? Is that something they'll listen to, or is that just posturing?
I think it's just posturing.
Okay.
I think that everybody, even Chuck Schumer strategically wrote to McConnell this week and said, we're here to stabilize the Obamacare markets if you're willing to do it. I think that's political posturing.
Okay.
I don't think McConnell's going to take him up on it, but I think that in this Lindsey Graham gang effort, it does give Republicans some cover if they defect from McConnell. So, I'm not totally opposed to Democrats making this offer right now.
Okay. Well, we'll keep a close eye on it because, of course, I guess we still have to remember that you should never underestimate the ability of some Democrats to just wander off into the wilderness and do something dumb and give an entree to Republicans to pull some kind of trick. But keep an eye on it.
Even Joe Manchin, who's talking about joining in this gang or whatever, and his problems with Obamacare, says he's not willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Was his direct quote. Because, of course, it's a cliche.
Yeah, right. Everybody loves babies, and why everybody's down on bathwater, I'm not sure.
I know.
Honestly, bathwater does so many good things. Now, once it's used, it is time to throw it out. That's true. But that's not to say bathwater is a bad thing. I don't know. It's got a bad rap. Anyway, time for us to wrap the show for today. Thanks, Joan, for coming by. Yeah, I know, right? we need more Oscar-style music. I got to get that music. Because that's essentially what it's all about. It's time to hand the microphones over to the after show. We hope we have left you with a better understanding of the dynamics of what's going on. Thanks, Joan, for coming and explaining that to us. We'll check in with you.
Clear as mud.
Yeah. Well, we'll check in with you in the heat of battle next week. Or, unless you are just too damn busy at that point. You'll have to let us know. We'll play it by ear.
All right.
Thanks very much, Joan. We'll catch up with you at some point, either directly on the air or through back channels to let everybody know you're too busy in the heat of next week's battle. Talk to you then, or tweet with you then anyway. Time for us to hand things over, of course, to the guys on the after show. Let's see what we've got on tap for today and how much of it we can squeeze in. The little music stuff is already starting. So I will use this short break to try and select for you the juiciest of the nuggets they have to offer you on the after show, which follows us on Netroots Radio right here. Keep it here all day.
From Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Oh my God, Betsy DeVos, the Education Secretary, is meeting with men's rights activists to discuss how to better dismantle Title IX. I would imagine that this is the 5-alarm fire that's raging today. There's no sense in which it would make any sense to meet with those alt-right weirdos. You'll hear more about it next.